Running through my veins, you're being needles into my soul. Two sides of the world seamed into one. It was your calloused fingers that caressed the cloth now in my bare skin. It was your brow sweat that soaked into these stitches. It was your tired, hot breath that weaves into this stretch. We were cut from the same cloth, you and I, patterned from the same likeness, our brown skins coating us like amrabon, distant cousins, ripped apart at the motherland. Except this one here was destined for economic export, and you were destined to industry at home. My land of opportunity is quilted with your life. In this global economy, Bangladesh is tattooed into the fabric of America. Yet xenophobia frays at our existence here, othered into being from there, unwelcomed by those who wear these clothes. My label may be threadbare and faded, but make no mistake, the tag on the back of my neck reads, "Made in Bangladesh," too. I'm kind of like you, where your last touch, destined for America, is my first touch, longing for home, where the whir of your singer machine is my Tagore song, tugging me for more, where your survival tenacity makes me unravel to the core. It is your warm blood that seeps into the seams of the rebel factory floor. It is your singed skin that is stitched into these conflicted clothes. It is your salted tears squeezing out of the needle eye. With just a switch of a stitch, how simple your life, mine could have been. We are cut from the same cloth, you and I. I may not be Bangladeshi, but I am made in Bangladesh too. Two sides of the world seamed into one. How many of you are familiar with what happened in Bangladesh with Rana Plaza? I don't see lots of hands up. The building collapsed about 2 years ago. 1,300 people died, seamstresses, they were mostly women. I was part of releasing an album called Beats for Bangladesh, full of South Asian American artists. We're fundraising for the orphans and the women. You can check that out. This track, poem was recorded into a track for the site, so you can visit that. This next piece is a story. I haven't done this in a couple of years, so bear with me. It's a hot, tropical day. I'm 11, maybe 12, sitting on the lower steps of my Nana's living room, staring at the swinging kitchen door. Every time it swings open, I catch glimpses of chaos. A strong, tart smell slowly seeps into every nook and cranny in the house. I see my Nani in the kitchen, wearing one of her old stained cotton saris, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, with the gajer look hovering behind her. I wasn't allowed in because my Nani had a system in place and I wasn't going to mess that up. It was guava jam time. I didn't know what guavas were before I went to Bangladesh. I had been born and raised in Los Angeles, and our trips to my parents' homeland of Bangladesh had been infrequent. Back then in the 80s, here in Los Angeles, you couldn't really find guavas in the market. I knew that Mom loved them, that they were green, and I knew that whenever anyone would go to Bangladesh, amongst the care packages people would bring back for us were these Ovaltine jars full of this infamous guava jam, triple wrapped in plastic in that facetious way that my Nana had. My mom cherished this jam that was homemade by her mother, and the rest of us were only allowed to taste it and use sparingly. The summer I turned 12, our family spent 3 months in Dhaka at my grandparents' house. My Nana's house was shaded by these tall guava trees that grazed the windows of the second story, and over the course of the summer, flowers would turn into little green balls and then into light green baseball-sized fruits. Unable to wait for the guavas to fully mature, my mother would take the pre-ripe guavas, dust them with salt and chili, and suck on them like she was a little kid again. When the guavas started falling from the trees on their own, and the house filled with a strong ripe scent, that's when we knew they were ready. The house would be madness for 3 days, and the kitchen and the dining room a cluttered mess as guavas were juiced and jellied and canned. The The end result was Ovaltine jars of delicious, mouth-watering guava jam that would last until next year's guava season. Back in LA, when I was in high school, my mom learned of the underground guava tree market sold out of suburban backyards. My parents were so excited that they brought home their first tree. This is what it means to be an immigrant living in California. Smuggling seeds in Ziploc bags from the motherland or buying trees from the underground market for the illegal fruits and vegetables that tasted like home. By the time I got to college, our guava trees were fruiting in abundance. They were big and juicy, hundreds, maybe thousands of guavas. My parents didn't know what to do with them. Our house would have a pungent smell for those 2 months of the fruiting season. And my parents, they would take them to the mosque in plastic grocery bags and distribute them like Muslim Santa Claus laden with homeland fruits. When I moved to Oakland a few years later, my mother would send care packages of the guavas up north. The funny thing is, I don't even like guavas. I don't like how the seeds get stuck in my teeth. August 2011 was the first year our guavas didn't fruit in abundance. My mother had died quite suddenly 2 months earlier. It was my mom who was the gardener, the nurturer of our plants, and of our family. She was the glue that kept our family together, and we didn't know how to exist without her. Neither did the trees. Within days of her death, my dad mentioned how he wanted to cut down all the guava trees. We begged him not to. I started doing things because they reminded me of her. I painted sunsets and paper planes. I collaged her words. I started cooking Bangladeshi food obsessively, repeating the same recipes over and over again until it tasted like hers. And it never tasted like hers. And this time, I had no one to call to see if the recipe was right. That following March, I moved back to LA, and then on one of my visits back home, I noticed a big pile of guavas in a plastic bag by the front door. It was the season again. And when I saw my dad, he was slightly frantic. He once again was making the daily guava deliveries to the community, but this time, he seemed a bit more frustrated. There were too many. He couldn't keep up with the crop. And the guavas, I think, made him miss mom. So I decided to make guava jam. I wanted to do something with all the guavas. It felt like such a waste. I don't usually cook, and I've never made jam before. And this time I didn't have my nanny or my mom to turn to for guidance. I turned instead to the internet. It was Eid, and I took the day off. After morning prayers and a visit to the grave, my dad and sisters went to different houses. I chose to stay at my parents' house and attack the guavas. I picked, peeled, and cored them. I blended and boiled. I sugared and pectined. I found a meditative rhythm to cooking in the same kitchen that my mom had for so many years, and in making the guava jam that reminded her of home so much. I made the jam with a purpose, like it was something I had to do. My dad came home in the evening and saw me in frenetic chaos. Slowly, he started helping, pouring the sugar as I mixed the guavas, measuring out the lime juice. He wanted to learn too. He wanted to remember too. Do you know what I'm thinking right now? He said as he wiped down the counter. I'm thinking your mom is watching us. Bap, our Betty, getting into trouble. I stirred the guava slowly, watching it bubble. Do you know what I'm thinking? I replied. That mom and Nani are watching, thinking that we are doing it all wrong. He laughed. 6 days, 7 batches, and 50 cans later, the guavas came out just fine. And maybe so would we. Thank you.